without analyzing its own property of each object. If you only practice you cannot avoid the sense of discrimination, which is only trying to adhere to cut down the reason. That's because you have no wisdom. Here, the important thing is having the conception or having the concept of what is the wisdom here. Normally, when we say having a lot of knowledge, having abundant knowledge, it is not the same as being wise. Knowing many things and wisdom, being wise, how is it different? Well, even the letters in Sanskrit, in Sanskrit it is pranya, and this is and also in Chinese we also write two different letters for knowledge. This chi, the first one is knowing, and the second one is wisdom chi. So knowing, just like a sun shining, it's a comparison. When we are looking at tree, when it is sunny, we can distinguish whether it is flower or how dark or how light is the color too. But when we look at tree in the night, then we have the knowledge that it's a tree, but we cannot come to know about that very deeply. So the wisdom and knowledge is different in that way. And how is it different in our everyday life? Wisdom refers to the mind or heart that doesn't have any greediness. If you have greediness inside, then no matter how much wisdom or how much knowledge you have, how much wisdom you have, it is only merely wisdom. It's only merely a knowledge. And also in our modern world, we also say the knowledge industry. Well, it could also be a very profitable business, but if you look at it from one side, then that is also very low standard way of thinking. With knowledge and industry, when they come into together, it could also produce devastating results. Like it says, with the knowledge we know, we are going to earn money. So for example, if you say, I know how to train animals, and what are you going to do with the animals that you have trained? Well, I'm going to earn money. So if knowledge, if you train tiger and if you are going to earn money, and can animals be happy? And it is also impossible that the human being who also trained them is happy. Well, you might think that like just like a dolphin show, you might feel that they're happy, but with the dolphin show that you're looking, it could also produce a very bad karma, and that's why. Then what is wisdom? If we repeat once again. What is wisdom? Buddha has given three different meanings to wisdom. Everything is changing. That is wisdom. Nothing starting from me. There's nothing that doesn't change. And if you can make that sort of observation, then that is wisdom. And because of that, everything doesn't have a nature that doesn't change inside of them. That's why when we talk about happiness, we say holding on to something like that, we cannot be happy. And then how are we going to do? We also need to find the state in the mind with which we can accept them happily, and that we call nirvana. And so, if our utopia is the happiness we gain from earning money, then historically, you have to see if there's anyone who was happy because they earned money throughout their life. At the time of their death, there is no one at all. And if you think you'll be happy because you have power, that is also something that is impossible. Why? Because ultimately you will feel the voidness and the sense, and you feel futile about everything you have achieved. So all the things that you feel are happiness, in reality, they are not actually the sources that bring you happiness. For a short time, you think you are happy, but it is not actually true. That's almost like drinking seawater, salty seawater, at the time when you're thirsty, in order to quench your thirst. But at the time of drinking, you feel you're quenching your thirst, but after some time, you feel more thirsty, and you could die of dehydration. So, in short, what is wisdom? Wisdom is knowing that everything is void, and not having obsession in anything, and understanding that, and also not having attachment to anything. That is wisdom. Knowing that is wisdom. Then, if at the time of our practice, having the right opinion or having the right perception, what is that? Having the right perception is with the perception that we know that everything is void, and without that kind of understanding, then whatever practice we do, it leads us to attachment. That's why without having the proper perception, it doesn't have much meaning to do any sort of practice. And without proper perception, if we do any sort of meditation or practice, and if we say that, then it leads to another source of attachment. And so, having the right perception, without analyzing each property of each object, and if you don't observe things with voidness, then it will lead to attachment. If you have attachment, if they are the attachments, but all these attachments, they cannot stay with you, and they do not last. And there's nothing that you can trust on, and they will not be there for a long time. So even people, they try to give sense of absolutism to anything, to something, but even though, such as like having the absolute God who is a creator, but even until now, it is an object that man has just given meaning to, but in reality, not even 0.0001% has been proven so far. Therefore, yesterday, when they were talking about the law of relativity, it was said that Einstein, when he was discussing about the law of relativity, actually, if you look at it in the opposite way, some people say they have discussed about the law of relativity in order to explain about the lightness of light, and in order to prove the speed of the light, or to give the meaning to the light, they talk about the law of relativity. But well, but if you ask if the speed of the light is has absolute meaning, but then it is not so. So far, what has been proven, it is a value that Einstein has given. So without analyzing the property of each object with wisdom, then it leads to the situation that you cannot avoid, the law of discrimination that only happens in order to cut down all your worries or thoughts. Well, this is something very detailed, so listen to it carefully. The one person couldn't come because she has too much work today. And when you're looking at an object, if there doesn't have a property and it is void, and also there is no sense to have attachment, and even I don't exist, and I have came into form in sense of law of relativity, and so even if I want to have obsession, that person will not be there for me, and so I also cannot be there for that person. It's just that they change, both of them. And if this doesn't become the prior given condition, then what happens is that either it's Taoism or any source about the religion that's happening in many countries. They try to cut off the thoughts. Well, thoughts is very difficult to cut them down. They're trying to cut down the thoughts. You're not trying to stop the thoughts, but you're trying to cut down your greediness. And how do you cut down your greediness? Even the object doesn't have a sense that lasts eternally, and also I don't have that kind of sense. And so we all arise because of our dependent arising, and we all disappear too. And so knowing that properly and having a proper understanding, and if I don't have obsession to the object, and then the suffering ends, and also my greediness disappears. Since there's nothing, even my body, even this body never existed in the beginning, in voidness. If you look at it from the point of view of voidness, and there's nothing that really exists. Without making proper observation, no matter whatever practice you do, you're actually creating another soul or another spirit or another Atma. So most of the time, people who do practice, they tend to say they're trying to cut off the mind. But how are you going to cut down the mind? There is something that doesn't make sense. Well, but we still have this. If someone has poop in the house, then we have no attachment at the dung. Do you have any attachment? Well, maybe there are some people, but there's no one who has attachment to that, so we throw them away. If we don't have obsession to the object, then we do not have any kind of greediness. We just know what that object is. Why is it so? Essentially, the void, and also if we know that there is nothing that is eternal, then there is no reason for us to be greedy about something. And even the greediness that has been caused, that doesn't have eternity. So even I myself, we have no reason to be greedy or obsessed about anything. You understand? After making such an observation, if you pray or if you meditate, if you sit down and if you try to concentrate at something, then starting already, you can see the voidness inside that's arising inside your heart, and even your thoughts switching from one to another, you realize that they don't really have much value. If that doesn't happen, then you cannot cut down the greediness. Although we say that greediness has disappeared, that is not true. Even all of you, although you say you are practicing, but when you talk about your children, then you just change your direction. You cannot control your feelings, and then even your eyesight, even your eyes, you they lose their straightness, and also you fall into the wrong path. So the greediness is the wrong thing. So if you let that go, then there's not even 0.1% for you to get wrong. There's no reason for you to get wrong. So even when you do practice, the vipassana has to become the basis, and if you also have the right perception, then each time you treat an object, you know it's futile. And you also know that they don't have a phone. No matter how handsome that person is, at the time of cremation, and also when we blow away the ash, what beauty is there, and what kind of good forms are there? Even if it's a person with a lot of money, and at the time when they die, and when we cremate their body, and when we get rid of that ash, then what is left behind? The only thing they have left is only like hyenas who are only trying to get more. So you cannot also avoid the voidness that only tries to cut down the thoughts. If you only cut down the thoughts, then you also fall into the thoughts but that's also just something that you try to believe so, but that doesn't really happen. You cannot actually practice them. When you say there is a progress in our practice, does a person has a problem in their heart or even in their body? Well, if their body aches, if their heart aches, even the body aches. If body aches, then heart also aches, and also if heart aches, then the body also aches. When the heart aches, when you have a heartache, even your body aches together. Do you know which feels heaviest when you have problem with your heart or your sentiments? It's a mind. And also you start to close your eyes and your head also bends forward. And also because because your head aches too much, you tie them around, or you hold on to it, or you roll around with your pillow if your heart aches. And also heart and body, although there is a little time difference, but because they exist as one, they ache together, they hurt together. So that's why when I just asked, about 50% answered both body and heart aches. Yes, that's correct. Both of them ache together. And for some, they say although their body aches, they say their heart is very healthy. It is not so. As much as your body aches, even part of your heart also gets cut down. So it's also good to be healthy in both mind and also heart. So it's good to be healthy in your mind and also in your heart. So it means without greediness, we are healthy. If we ask what is a healthy mind or healthy heart, well, those who has disease in their heart, there are too many of them, because this world is a difficult place to live. Even if you're living your life in a harsh way, you don't know that it's harsh. That's why it's even more harsh. Because you have no sense of value, no sense of standard. You don't know how harsh that is. If you're aware how harsh that is, then you will try to change. But people nowadays, because of so-called freedom, they don't listen to something that they don't like, and so they live their life as per their interests, and they just fall to the wrong places. In olden times, when people don't listen, in olden times, when you tell people that do not be greedy, and then that's the end of the teaching. But nowadays, we have to tell people not to be greedy, but they still chase after their greediness. And after they fail everything, they come to us. They come to me, and also they ask if but that can save. And also, even if we tell people to study, they don't study at all. And even and and amongst the many different practices nowadays, not drinking is one of the biggest practice. And to a drunk student, they asked me, what's the fastest way to gain enlightenment? And I said, that's not drinking. And the person asked, not that one, what is the fastest way of gaining enlightenment? To someone who is drunk and to someone who is only drinking, the way is actually not drinking. It's almost like going to mountain and you're looking for a fish. It's almost like you're trying to catch the Spanish mackerel up in the mountain. And I was walking somewhere, and it was written. I saw some wrong letters, and so I mistook that they also have like a fish in the mountain, but that's also wrong. You have to know that there is no eternity in any being, and since you don't know it well, you try to look for something that is eternal. So in Korean Buddhism, you look for personality or property that's eternal, and you look for something that exists. If you talk like that in that way, then it is not actually Buddhism. And since you don't know it's void, and since you don't know that it doesn't exist, you talk about something that doesn't really exist, that's outside Buddha's real teachings. And also, because we also say it's a level of voidness, and not knowing that something of its own property exists, we say that absence of ego or absence of voidness. It's actually voidness. But those drunk people, they also said, because I am drunk, they are in the stage of voidness. But that is not void. That is not absence of self. But that's just that because you're drunk, you don't have the proper consciousness. This is because the light of wisdom is deficient. So the prajna, it happens because the strength to experience or study the voidness is weak. This happens. So if we memorize 1000 Hand and Eye Sutra, or if we memorize the Diamond Sutra, you feel like if you memorize them, they relate to a certain achievement, but that is not so. You feel that you'll be gaining fortunes or virtues, but that doesn't happen. If you only beg, then you were only gaining the virtue of begging. If you don't even work and if you only ask, that's almost like begging. But if you know voidness, then you know uh, then you know the cause and the effect, because depending on the cause you have the effect. That's why you don't pray for anything. Why do you pray? Are you a beggar that you are only begging? So I also say these kind of things. The Buddhism nowadays in Korea has made every citizens beggars, because they are only begging for something without even accumulating their virtue. Although I try to give them blessings, I think I don't want to become the head of the beggar, so I let it go. I talk about this all the time. Even if you have children, there's not much use. It only causes headaches to you. So if I uh, those people who doesn't have who is misfortunate, we have to teach them how not to be misfortunate. But just because they don't donate money, or if they are very stingy about things, what changes does it make? It only makes it more funny. If you only give like $3, and if you think those people who are misfortunate, well, what are you writing? Are you writing in hope the 80-year-old grandmother would have children? Well, someone once said, the Dongguk University, the director, and all the people at the management, they got out of the post. Well, even the younger people, they have more straight thoughts. When I said the president or the chancellor of the school should also resign, they said they have to control the school, but they are the ones who caused havoc in the university. Well, it's not the students. Well, maybe once in a while, maybe the male students, they drank too much and caused problems, or female students, they wore skirts that are too short. But it's actually the chancellors who caused the problems. You too, when you are dizzy, which part of your body that you feel dizzy? It's the head, right? So it's actually the people in the head. And even at home, if the head of the house drinks and he comes home in dizziness, and if he also talks about wrong things, or if he only curses in the bathroom, then it's him who feels dizzy. But children or child who is just born doesn't causes dizziness to dizziness, isn't it? Maybe they mess up the house, but uh, but the dizziness normally is caused by the people at the top. When you're dizzy, you should not perform a surgery for your toes. The chancellor has to remain in order to take care of the university. But I think him resigning is the way to take care of the university. So whether it is our society or or people who are trying to control or take care of the place, when they come to elections, they have to think first. Are they trying to sort out problems, cool down the heads of the city, or are they trying to cause more problems? Have you thought about what kind of effect do you cause to your children? Ask if your child feels dizzy at home. Why is it so? Uh, because to children, you have to teach them the law of virtue. Well, it's almost like a crime. Although they commit crimes so much, they don't even know that they're committing crimes, and they don't even have the sense of guilt. They don't even feel guilty because the brain, if we are teaching them letters, understanding the letters or characters is possible when they're about 8 or 9 years old. Before that, even if you teach them, they don't actually know, because from the dots it becomes lines, and from lines it becomes sides, or from sides, if it becomes like a if it becomes like a dimension, uh, if it becomes like a dimensional structure, it's still difficult for us to understand. It's so like that for children too. When they have drawn out the flat shape, and if they don't if it doesn't improve so that they can understand it like a dimensional structure, then even if many like after so much effort, it's impossible. And despite all that, if you try to teach children something too much, that is also impossible. Without training them properly, you only have a brain, so you only have something in the mind. Like, what if my child is worse than others? And so you send them to so many different academies: cello, guitar, taekwondo, and math, English. You send your child all over different places. To 4 or 5 year old child, someone who has just acquired their senses, and even their eyes, and even their sight, and even hearing is not up to its perfection. To those children, you teach them it is letter Ga. Do you understand? Because you push it too much, so they also read after you. Let's go play. But when you really ask them what this letter is, they don't know what to say. So the children, we have a saying, mother. Well, when you are trying to plow the bean farm, it's very difficult. Also, it is, and also you have to do it when the sun is at your head. So you need a lot of sun in order to get good beans. And when they were trying to plow the bean farm, the mother was trying to do it, so the son felt bad about it, and son said, "Mother, you don't have to do it." And so mother asked, "What have you done?" And so for the mother, the son plucked all the beans so that it's not very difficult for her. So can the beans survive? And the beans, they all dried away. Well, if you start teaching kids like 3 to 4 years, then they'll lose their willingness to study. And because they have also done the prior education, they assume that they know, but they only know it when the brain has properly developed. At the time, they have this kind of sense that they want to study. So when they are actually ready, then they don't want to study at all. And then it results in the ruin. That's why many of the rich families, the kids, they don't study well, or they're not really good at it. And that's actually the outcome of their mother. So you have to do it. You have to listen carefully. Right now, even our practice, they also have their own sequence and the method also. And the most important thing is the right thought. Although we haven't entered into the actual practice, we need to have the right perception, and that is the first preparation that we have to do. And after that happens, the practices methods, even if you do it, it doesn't really cause problems. Although you do the basic ones. Likewise, you have to analyze them individually, correctly, and if you know it, and and knowing it, only the truthness, it's almost like having the light of wisdom, the fire of wisdom, which arises when you rub the trees together, Buddha has said. So here, only through the observations, you will have the wisdom, you will have the prajna. So during the observation, if you only observe leaving your heart that moves from that sways together with the wind, if you study like that, then after all, even if you're making the observation, you're studying out of your greediness, then it's not okay. So through the samatha, you have to reduce the mind that sways. And then if you try to reduce it, although it sways, it reduces a little. If it reduces little, then whether the human mind it sways a little or it stops, our mind comes back and we find our the clear consciousness, and we call that the right consciousness. So it's not okay if you keep using your brain. If you keep trying, if you only try to find the way out, it's almost like there's a clock, right? And in the clock, we also have the pendulum. It's almost like on the top of pendulum, you have a screw. That is like eye. So with the eye in center, you keep thinking, you keep swaying. And that's like you're measuring, will it beneficial that way or will it beneficial this way? That's the discrimination using eye. So through the discrimination, do you think it's going to be beneficial to me or beneficial to you? Is this better or is that better? So when someone asks me nowadays, I say so. Then I say, your thoughts has ruined, because whatever they do, they're going to fail. Most of them, they move here and there. Most of them. And very foolish people, well, not very foolish, but very bad beings, very bad humans, they move faster. If you move like this for a long time, what happens? That person feels dizzy, and then that person will complain about headaches. From there, if you let go of your greediness, you can give it up. You will feel that it stops or it detaches from you right away. These human beings, although they say they don't have the greediness, that is not so. The greediness is very strong. That's why they hold on to it and they try to wrap it up saying it is not greediness. And they pretend that they don't have greediness or bad things. But inside, deep within, they have a lot of greediness. And like a gentleman wise in Japanese, they wear suits and they change their shirts twice a day. And on the hair, they have this format style. And even if they don't have hair at the side, then they will pull it from the other side and put it there. And although they sit there with a posture, you can see that it's very dark inside. And also nowadays, they have many things to fool others, like driving good cars or having good clothes, or if you live in a luxurious house, then other people will think, oh, the person should be rich, that person should be living well. But from my opinion, living well is someone who can work for others or help others. That I say living well. And more than that, there are also people who try to get rid of their greediness, and that kind of people I say they live well. But people who live worse are those uh, are those who has money, but they are still very stingy, and they pretend they don't have it. Well, you don't need so much to live and survive whole your life. Not you don't need so much. And although I'm saying it maybe easily, but if you eat too much just because you have a lot of money, if you eat 6 meals a day, you cannot survive, and also you cannot drive 10 cars at the same time. The worst people are those who are rich but who are stingy. And also, people who are rich, but despite their richness, they do bad things to earn more money. And second, who are very poor, uh, and also lives in a poor way. Because they are poor, they also live in a very poor way, and they cannot even show smile to others. That is also very bad. I hate those people. Well, but that when he saw with his supernatural eyes, if he didn't talk about uh, the samsara, then it would have created a lot of problem. Live your life well, helping others, spend some money, and although we say that, they don't really listen. They only say, "Okay, I understand." That's the answer that they usually give. They're not very happy, and they're like, yes. But I do that many times, and also they say, and also when we ask them to spend their money for the good of others, then what do they say? I pay all the tax. I pay all the tax. Why should I do that? The country, the nation has to do that. Well, I don't know why they say that. They're not paying so much. I'm sure that more than they pay less tax than they're being benefited from the country. And also, and it's almost like parents. They have given so much, but they're actually giving less to their parents. So sometimes I talk about those things. And nowadays, I have also grown 1 year older, so I also scold people a little more. Please don't do it like that, or don't do like this. Well, that person is saying if you don't sting, then they will not bite, and so they will not kill you too. It's almost like a dog. If you scare away the dog, then the dogs will get more scared. So if you just leave that person, then they would decide if that person is handsome or if the other person is handsome. So I do scold a little nowadays. Well, although it is not something that is going to change even if I scold, but I tend to tell people to use it to a good place, and I haven't seen anyone, even in history, who has taken it after death. But and even Emperor Jinshi, he pretended to take them all, but nowadays they take out everything, including the soldiers in his grave, and and also the face reader. Uh, well, it happened that one of the king, his one of the king, uh, one of the face reader, he said you have the fate that they will take out you'll be dying out when they cut your head off, when they chop off your head. But he lived all his life, but after he died, he was dug out of his grave after 16 years, and his whole body was cut down. So in order to understand the property of the object, during the inspection time, you have to use your emotions and also wisdom properly. The above line clearly tries to tell that if you only cut down the simple mental activity, then it doesn't lead to the practice of ultimate truth. Well, when your heart sways, then your heart doesn't actually stop. Uh, when your heart is only swaying, then you don't have the trueness, or you don't have any other things that actually helps. and and so you have to cut down the wrong things when you're aware that they are wrong, and then it will lead to trueness. Only even resting the practice of activity, mental activity, then you can be free from misunderstanding of Atman. But but it is somewhat a little deficient to explain or understand the voidness. So total or complete understanding of voidness is not easy. It's possible only if you have the right perception. This is because as a prana, the observation with prana is weak. Therefore, you cannot be completely free from not knowing. So you cannot be completely free from knowing things. So that's why there is a shadow of darkness. Although despite the practice, or even if you have religion, it itself becomes more the shadow of darkness. Therefore, in order to understand the voidness completely, you have to raise the flame of wisdom. So in order to understand voidness, you have to strengthen the power of wisdom. Uh, uh, Essence of Buddhism, or essence of many things, lies in the three Dharma mudra. You have to think about them deeply. It's also spoken in Ratna Mega Sutra. In such a way, in order to be away from such a misunderstanding, which is ill-trained, and the wrong thoughts, all the wrong thoughts, in order to throw them away all. So what is Buddha? Buddha is someone who has gotten rid of all these misunderstandings or useless arguments. Then what is Buddha's teaching? Buddha's teaching is merely a method to cure the disease. If you look at it essentially, then it doesn't exist. Why? Because it is a teaching that is formulated to train all sentient beings. Those people who watch Sokchan monasteries training, the teaching, it's a little okay even if I speak a little more directly. Well, for Himalaya mountain, because you cannot go straight up the mountain. You have to go in a curve, and it takes really long time. You have to rest a little after you go up a little, And although you have so many kilometers you have covered, if you measure directly, it's not even 2-3 kilometers, but you have to take like 20 to 30 kilometers. We don't have to do it like that, isn't it? So if I speak too directly, then if I speak directly, then you have to make a deep observation. If not, if you misunderstand the things that I have said, then and if you say, well, there is no teaching of Buddha, you don't have to study sutras, well, that's all wrong. If you misunderstand teachings of Buddha, then you can be born as someone who cannot speak. Well, Venerable Jinok said there is no Buddha's teaching. I did not say Buddha's teaching doesn't exist. Yoga is a practice. You have to practice yoga, then you practice voidness. The people who have studied voidness more, then they understand voidness completely by understanding the minds that study the different fluctuation of mood, and also there's people whose mood doesn't fluctuate so much. So even if you have something happening, like for to say, well, my husband earned about 20 million, and you're so happy, you don't know what to do, and you're like almost walking on the moon. And also some people, well, the husband's shop became bankrupt, and they have to empty the house because they have so much debt, and then they tie their head and they blame the world, they blame the husband, and they also blame the parents, and after so much blaming, they're so tired and they stay in the hospital. But then when you think about it, even if they have bankruptcy, then they also play a certain role in there. Well, have you brought out anything when you were born from your stomach, when you're born from your mother? You haven't brought anything when you're born. Then what do you mean bankrupt? Isn't it? Even if you have earned millions of dollars, suddenly, think about it. There's no mother. So even if you have earned so much money, the money and well, if you study properly, then normally the money and destruction or disaster that happen together, especially those people who are not very broad-minded, then if they have money, they either have a fire or they buy cars and they have accidents with the car, or if they have money, then they think about like going to maybe a church or someplace. They do a little disastrous act, and it's not only the husband but also the wives. Because they have money, I who drive about like I drive a $70,000 car. I should not go to hair salon because it's not up to my standard. And then you decide to go for a place where you have to pay $300 for a salon, and also the food. You go to restaurants where you cut your steak with big knives, and even the clothing. Well, I have to live up to my standard. When you think about it, although your husband who has earned 10 million or 100 million, if there is no movement in your heart, then you will not buy clothes that's like 2,000, 3,000 per clothes, or drive expensive cars, or with the hair that's already dead, you don't pay like hundreds of dollars if there is no movement that's happening inside your heart. Whereas someone said, the talent entertainers, they do a lot of photoshops, and they do pay or invest their a lot of money for their skin and hair to earn money. But even when they do that kind of like treatment, when they age, if there's so much worries inside, then they'll just age all of a sudden in an instant. Just stay as how you are right now. So even while looking at that object, you have to think that although I've earned money, it comes with a disaster, and it's going to disappear, disperse, and it could also hurt me. You have to think it, even when you are thinking of many other things. You have to think it together. If you have that kind of thought together, then slowly the attachments they begin to fade away. Also, when you think about it, it's something that you didn't have from the beginning, because you never brought anything at all. And also, because of that, even if you die without anything, it's how you came. So after that, when you cremate your body and when you blow away the ashes, it is just like how you came to this world. You're not losing anything, and it's nothing to be sad about. It only happened because of your emotions or affections. But even affections, they don't mean something. They don't have so much values. So you have to make observation deeply all the time. If there is something good happening, then it is something good for your greatness. I always talk about the irony of the fate, right? The horse ran away, and the village people came and said, the horse ran away. What can we do? Because all the property ran away. What? And the grandfather said, well, that I don't think that's entirely bad. And after some time, about a year later, the horse came back with a baby, and so the assets, the property became double. And they were like, how can something like this happen? You earn money. And the grandfather also said, I don't think it's entirely good. And while training the baby horse, the son fell from the horse, and he became a disabled. And then said, well, it's not entirely bad. That's what grandfather said again. And then there was a war, and all the male from the village were taken out, and they died, taken to war, and they died. And because he was disabled, he was not sent to war, and so he was only man remaining in the village, and they were so happy that. And they said, well, even even becoming a disabled person or physically challenged person is not entirely bad. But then I don't know the story afterwards. But in this, but whatever problem or disaster that you face right now, it's not going to give you 100% suffering. Even if there is something, whichever good thing happening in your life, I don't think that's entirely happy or entirely good. It cannot happen. Why is that so? Because everything is relative. So Buddha has said something like, uh, even if someone comes and cuts off my hand, do not hold grudges. And even if a doctor comes and cures your hand or takes your hand back, do not be entirely grateful about it. So the essence here is the sentiment of gratitude or hatred. They are the emotions that arises from your ego or yourself. So it is not actually the sentiments of wisdom. So even you, when you say good husband, what is a good husband? Someone who is good to me. Well, I am saying that's a wrong thought. Even understanding what is mind, there is also understanding by understanding by understanding what is original mind, and you also realize that it is also void by its nature. And if you know this, then you can enter into the yoga practice. Yoga practice of voidness, and that is also a sort of enlightenment. This teaching refers that only the person who can absolutely understand or analyze, they can enter into the void yoga practice. All the wisdom, all the activities of mind, with prana, if you don't understand the nature, the original nature of the object, then it is impossible to enter into the sense which sense of discrimination. It's Buddha, because Buddha only think about good and wise things. It's good, and the original teaching method of Buddhism is to encourage people to think with their wisdom. Likewise, with proper wisdom, by analyzing them as they are, and you enter into your meditational practice, and if you do that, then you're not obstructed with their forms. Even in this world and that world, you don't enter into your practice. Even if you don't enter into samadhi, but because you don't take forms as your object. That's why we say a practitioner of samadhi who does not have a place of origin. With wisdom, if you have to understand the property of all the objects, and because you practice samadhi without the object of the object part of the perception. So we say you're your excel wisdom wise practitioner. This is the content mentioned in the Ratna Mega Sutra. Well, when I'm eating now, I'm eating food like this. And if you think about where is my diamond ring, then you're obsessed about your diamond ring. Then you have to think that, I should get rid of the diamond ring. If you have attachment, then that kind of thought would arise. When you're eating, you should only think about food. Well, it is not so. When you're eating, and before we sleep, we can build like 12 houses. But to eat, we move around like 12 different restaurants. And while eating, if you feel that, well, it's not tasty, the noodles I ate last time was so delicious, you should not think like that. If you do that, then that means you have attachment to that. That means you have attachment. I'm going to say one last joke. Well, before, who is a little aged, is my neighbor. When he was a bachelor, there was a lady he liked. He wanted to get married to her, but there was an objection from the house, and so he got married to someone he doesn't even like. And when we go to his house, each time they fight, compared to the lady before, compared to the lady I liked before, you are so ugly. And then the wife would get so angry and say, then go now and live with her. So I asked my friend, until when did your father said that? And my friend answered that until he was about 70. It seems like each time his wife yells, he thinks more. So, well, maybe if the wife didn't yell so much, but when he liked, there's only the sentiment of likeness. Well, there is no other hatreds or other thoughts like when you throw away the socks. So it's built like a utopia. And they keep having that argument. Each time they have argument, well, if the argument gets a little up to a certain stage, then they fight. Well, I should have lived with that person, and then the wife would get angry, and you can hear the sound of utensils flying. That's because you have attachment. Let's end until here. Well, when we say if it's not abiding or it doesn't have attachment to anything or even samadhi, that means it has no attachments at all. So nothing. It also refers that nothing has its own property, whether it's an object or I, and so we call it samadhi of prajna. And it is mentioned in two of the texts, and one of them is Ratna Mega Sutra. Today we will do until here.